Welcome, dear listener. Take a slow, deep breath and let the soft weight of the present moment begin to ease away. Perhaps you are lying comfortably in your bed or sitting in a quiet corner with the light dimmed, the day fading softly around you. In this space, there is no hurry, no expectation, just the slow unfolding of another time, another life, far from our own. Tonight, we'll drift back across the centuries and continents to explore a life unfamiliar to most that existed quietly behind palace walls, within perfumed chambers and silent courtyards. The life of a concubine. Not a queen, not a wife in the formal, legal sense, but someone who shared in a ruler's intimacy, influence, and, often, uncertainty. Her world was one of silk and shadows, of ceremonial bows and whispered rivalries. It was a life that could bring power or ruin, luxury or loneliness, and though rarely written about in depth, it was a reality for countless women throughout history. From imperial China to the Ottoman harem, from the private quarters of Mughal emperors to the lesser wives of European courts, the concubine lived at the strange and shifting edge of authority. She was honored, yet subordinate, visible, yet voiceless. Her survival required not only beauty, but careful navigation through layered expectations, delicate politics, and the ever-present threat of displacement. This is not a tale of scandal or seduction. Instead, we will move gently through her world, her daily routines, her surroundings, her role in the greater palace system. What did she wear? What did she eat? How did she feel when the doors to her chamber closed each night? What choices did she truly have? Let us begin our journey, as she might have, on the first day she entered the palace. The gates have closed behind her, and life as she knew it has quietly slipped away. Imagine a soft morning haze rising over a walled city. In the distance, tiled rooftops shimmer faintly in the sun, and the faint scent of incense drifts on the breeze. The gates of the inner palace are tall, silent, and imposing. Outside them, life hums in steady rhythm. Merchants call out wares, children chatter in alleyways, officials pass by in lacquered carts. But inside the walls, all is still. Now, picture yourself as a young woman, perhaps in your early teens or not much older. You've been chosen by decree, by arrangement, or through quiet selection to enter the royal household. Your village or district may have seen this as an honor. Your family may have celebrated or worried in silence. Either way, the moment is now upon you. You are led past rows of guards and into the first courtyard. The stone under your shoes is smooth from centuries of footsteps. Around you, the architecture is intricate yet restrained wood, jade and tile, arranged in precise harmony. The sun is already warm, but the air carries a slight chill, sharpened by anticipation. You are no longer simply a girl. You are now part of the imperial householder, its equivalent in another royal court. Not a wife, not a servant, something in between. Your name is recorded in a large ledger, your belongings few and carefully selected dare inspected. An attendant leads you through a maze of halls and courtyards, each one quieter and more ornate than the last. You are assigned a room, shared perhaps with others of similar status. The bed is low and firm, the linens starched, the walls painted with scenes of blossoms and mountain paths. But the beauty feels distant, almost indifferent. The first days are disorienting. You are taught how to move, how to bow, how to speak in the correct tone. You learn that the palace has its own rhythms, its own calendar. Meals arrive at precise hours. Certain corridors are off limits. Eyes are always watching other concubines, older attendants, eunuchs who manage daily life with quiet efficiency. Much of your day is spent in preparation, lessons in etiquette, in the art of conversation, in music or embroidery. Depending on the culture and era, you may be schooled in dance, poetry, or even philosophy. Not because your opinion will be sought, but because cultivation is admired. A refined concubine reflects well on the emperor's court. Your appearance becomes a project. Attendants bathe you in scented water, scrub your skin with soft cloths, apply oils and powders. Your hair is styled elaborately, each coil and pin placed with intention. The garments you wear are delicate, sometimes uncomfortable. Stiff brocade, narrow shoes, layers of fabric that restrict movement. You are being shaped slowly, almost imperceptibly into someone else. And yet, the days are long. You wait, often, with nothing but silence for company. You are not yet summoned. You are not yet seen. You begin to understand that attention from the ruler is not guaranteed. It must be earned, but never too eagerly, desired, but never assumed. Others are waiting too, some older, experienced, eyes narrowed with calculation. Others, young like you, their expressions a careful mask of serenity. Friendships may form, but they are cautious, weighed with unspoken rivalry. A careless word could travel. Favor is a currency, and it is unstable. Night falls slowly over the palace. Lanterns are lit one by one. The air smells faintly of sandalwood, and something sweeter lotus, perhaps, or plum. You sit at the edge of your bed, combing your hair, thinking of home. No one visits your chamber. Not tonight. Perhaps not for weeks. You wonder if the ruler even knows your name. And so, your first season begins. A life of waiting, of quiet cultivation, of learning the subtle rules that govern this gilded world. You are no longer in the outside world. You live now in a place where silence speaks volumes, and where a single glance might change everything. Let us rest here, at the end of your first week, still unknown, still untouched by palace politics, in full but no longer free. As we move forward, we'll begin to explore how some women navigated these confines to rise, or to quietly fall. Now the days feel longer, and the silence heavier. You have memorized the patterns of the palace tiles, the scent of your silk robes after they have been sun-warmed, the precise sound of your own footsteps on polished stone. You know the rhythm of waiting, the stillness of anticipation, and then without warning it happens. Your name is spoken, not by a peer, not by an attendant, but by a higher voice. It might be a eunuch, calm and impassive, delivering the message with practiced neutrality. You are summoned. Tonight, the moment you feared, hoped for, imagined, and rehearsed now approaches on quiet feet. There is no fanfare, no explanation, just a delicate hand gesture from your chambermaid, and a flurry of preparations set into motion. A perfumed bath is drawn. Your hair is styled en wire, more intricate, held in place by carved combs and lacquered pins. Your best robe is laid out. You are gently powdered, not overly adorned, but made to glow under soft lamplight. The scent of jasmine clings to your sleeves. You are expected to appear flawless, though your thoughts tremble just beneath the surface. The corridor leading to the ruler's private chambers is quiet. Gilded screens cast patterned shadows across the floor. Attendants bow wordlessly as you pass, their faces unreadable. You are escorted by a eunuch, who stops just short of the final door. Beyond it, there is no guidance. The room is warm and dim, scented with incense and candle wax. The ruler is three-seated perhaps, or reclined, his expression calm, as though this evening were no different from the others. You bow deeply, as taught. Every gesture has been rehearsed, every word chosen with care. The ruler may speak, he may not. He may be kind or distant, curious or distracted. Your role is to please, but not overwhelm, to charm, but never demand. He may ask you to sing, to talk, to listen, and then intimacy. But whether this encounter is gentle or perfunctory, joyful or empty, its meaning is clear. You have been seen, and that changes everything. In the following days, you are watched more closely. Other concubines take notice with wary glances, others with silent calculation. You may be summoned again, or you may not. But the possibility alone reshapes your position. If the ruler returns, favor grows. Perhaps a gift arrives, a bolt of rare fabric, a string of pearls, a lacquer box filled with candied fruits. Your meals improve slightly. Your chamber is subtly upgraded, better lighting, quieter neighbors. Attendants begin to address you with a hint more deference. You are now in the delicate position of being not quite powerful, but no longer invisible. You have entered the middle tier, where many concubines remain seen, sometimes cherished, often forgotten again. It is a precarious space, one that brings both hope and anxiety. Should your favor continue, perhaps you are granted a title-honored lady, or something similar. Your name is whispered in corners. A eunuch or lady-in-waiting from the inner court begins to visit you, to speak of the ruler's moods, his schedule, his preferences. You learn, slowly, how to navigate this terrain, when to be present, when to retreat, what words please him, what gestures soften him. You begin to master the unspoken language of power, built not from edicts or orders, but from timing, tone, and subtle deference. Yet, with every rise, there is risk. Attention brings enemies. You notice that a tray of food arrives slightly later, that a compliment turns to coldness, that a trusted attendant has been reassigned. This is not coincidence. It is the quiet machinery of rivalry turning. Other women, perhaps older, perhaps once favored themselves, have watched this pattern many times. They know how quickly interest fades, how a small mistake, a too bold remark, an untimely illness can sever the delicate thread of influence. Still, some rise further. They bear the ruler's child. That, above all, changes a woman's fate. To be the mother of a prince, a royal heir, even a daughter born in favor, grants her new status. She moves to a different part of the palace, receives her own household. Her days, once filled with waiting, are now filled with instruction, ceremony, and political grooming. But many do not reach that point. They linger in the middle ranks, no longer new, no longer especially prized. They might remain in that space for decades, neither dismissed nor embraced. Their world becomes one of memory, of watching younger women enter the court as they once did, and of wondering when, or whether, they will be remembered again. For now, let us leave you as your favor begins to blossom gently, cautiously. You have been noticed. Your chamber is warmer tonight, and as you lie beneath silk sheets, staring at the painted ceiling, you begin to understand just how carefully you must move in the days to come. As we move deeper into the inner palace, we begin to feel the weight of hierarchy not as something announced or written, but as a constant, subtle pressure. It is felt in the distance between chambers, the number of attendants assigned, the quality of your tea, or the way a passing eunuch lowers his eyes. This is the quiet realm of women, and though the ruler may sit at its symbolic center, he visits only briefly. Day by day, it is the women of the court who shape its rhythms, who build and break alliances, who protect or unravel reputations, always with the softest of gestures and the most calculated of smiles. In this enclosed world, you are rarely alone. You live among other concubines, wives, daughters, nursemaids, and servants. There are whispered conversations in corridors, shared silences in gardens, brief exchanges of glances across silk-draped hallways. The walls may be still, but behind them, lives are always in motion. The inner court is governed by a strict and often unspoken ranking system. At the top sits the Empress or Queen, if one has been appointed. Her authority is official and ceremonial, but her influence varies depending on her relationship with the ruler and whether she has borne children. Below her are the consorts, often drawn from noble families, followed by titled concubines, each ranked and categorized, with names like noble lady, worthy lady, or chosen companion, and below them many more, untitled concubines, recent arrivals, servants, in training. The titles may sound poetic, but they carry real implications, deciding where you may walk, whom you may speak to, how many attendants you are permitted, what food you are served. It is a world built on gradations, on fine lines drawn with quiet precision. Jealousy is common, though rarely acknowledged aloud. It surfaces in small ways, a sharp tone, masked as courtesy, a delayed invitation, a misplaced item that never turns up again. Accusations are rarely spoken directly. Instead, rumors drift through the courtyards like mist. She was seen speaking too freely. A servant overheard her praying for something she shouldn't. The ruler has not called for her in weeks. Even friendship is fragile. A confidant today may be a rival tomorrow. Every woman in the court knows that favor is limited, and when one rises, another must fall. And yet, some friendships do endure, quiet alliances formed over shared memories, mutual protection, or simple human kindness. Much of the rivalry is built around access, to the ruler, to his ear, to his child. A single night of favor can shift the entire balance of the inner court. And so, women learn to be patient, careful, and observant. A misplaced smile, a gown too fine, a hairpin worn too boldly, each can be interpreted as overreaching, as grasping too openly for status. There are strategies for survival. Some women ally themselves with powerful eunuchs or senior attendants, trading favors for information or support. Others devote themselves to piety or art, cultivating a reputation for virtue. A few retreat entirely, fading into obscurity to avoid the dangers of ambition. And then there are the mothers. A concubine who has borne a son, especially one considered for succession, enters a new political arena. Her influence grows not just within the women's quarters, but across the entire court. She may sponsor projects, receive gifts from nobles, or engage in quiet diplomacy. But this too is precarious. If her son falls from favor, or if another gains prominence, her world can narrow once again. Sometimes accusations arise: witchcraft, disloyalty, insubordination. These are not always about truth. Often, they are tools. A well-placed whisper can lead to demotion, confinement, even banishment, and once removed from the palace, few ever return. But even in such a rigid world, there are moments of softness, the shared tending of a garden, the laughter of children learning to write, a song sung quietly in the evenings, passed down from older women to the younger ones. In these moments, the human thread weaves gently through the fabric of formality. As the day draws to a close, lanterns glow along the courtyards once more. The concubines return to their rooms. Some rest peacefully, others lie awake, calculating the next step in a game with no rules but many consequences. In this world of veiled glances and hidden meanings, silence is often the sharpest blade. Let us pause here, in this soft, flickering hush of nighttime reflection, and prepare to follow another path into the ruler's world. For though it is the women who breathe life into the palace, it is the ruler's attention that shapes their fate. Let us now turn gently toward the man at the center of this delicate world. The ruler, the sovereign, the emperor, sultan, king. His title may differ from one culture to another, but his position remains the same, the axis upon which the entire court quietly turns. From a distance, he seems to possess absolute power. His word can elevate or destroy. He determines the shape of court life, the structure of governance, the fate of nations and, of course, the futures of the concubines whose names appear in the palace registry. But within the soft-lit rooms of the inner court, his presence is far more mysterious than dominant. Imagine his chamber not a grand throne room, but a private retreat. The light is filtered through silk curtains, the air scented with warm spices and polished wood. Advisors speak with measured tones. Eunuchs step lightly, anticipating needs before they are spoken. Here, the ruler is not a man of war or governance. He is simply a man, tired perhaps, distracted, alone, despite the company. His days are dictated by ceremony and schedule. Meals are announced with ritual. Audiences are timed with precision. Each movement, each word, carries symbolic weight. He must be strong, just, inscrutable. But beneath the layers of title and expectation lies a human being shaped, too, by the confines of court life. He did not choose many of his concubines. They were selected for him by advisors, court matrons, or family members. Their beauty, lineage, or temperament may have played a role, but ultimately, their arrival was part of the machinery of dynasty. When he enters their chambers, it may be out of curiosity or obligation. Sometimes, it is political, a gesture to an allied clan, a way to honor a powerful faction. And yet, he may find moments of connection, a glance that lingers, a quiet conversation late into the night, a poem exchanged, a song remembered from childhood. These are rare, but they soften the edges of duty. Still, such moments are fleeting. He cannot love freely. Even affection is watched, measured, and analyzed by those around him. The birth of a child shifts the atmosphere. A son, especially, changes everything. The concubine is elevated. The child becomes part of succession politics. And the ruler? He may feel pride or relief or burden. Fatherhood here is often symbolic. The children are raised by tutors, nannies, and court officials. The ruler sees them in ceremony, not in play. Bonds may form latera, never at all. His private thoughts remain private. Few know what he truly feels. Trust is scarce. Spies are everywhere, and even long-serving attendants may serve other interests. He must withhold, remain guarded, even when surrounded by those who appear devoted. And what of aging? As the ruler grows older, the court shifts around him. New favorites emerge. Old alliances fade. The younger concubines arrive with unfamiliar songs and unfamiliar customs. He may begin to feel the palace change, subtly, but unmistakably. Even the most absolute of monarchs cannot stop time. Still, he remains the object of attention, the silent presence behind every decision, every glance. The women of the inner court think of him daily, some with longing, others with resentment, many with strategic calculation, but for him, their faces may blur. He sees dozens, perhaps hundreds over the years. He remembers those who left an impression, a clever remark, a shared sorrow, a particular fragrance. The rest fade into ritual. It is a strange irony that the man who decides so much for so many women is, in the end, deeply alone, surrounded by beauty, but starved for sincerity, adored, but never certain whether the affection is genuine or required. He cannot leave his palace walls. He rarely walks unnoticed. Every gesture is seen, every silence interpreted, and so his inner world narrows. The concubine's life is confined by hierarchy and obedience, but so too is his, by power and its expectations. Let us leave him now, seated in his chamber beneath the amber light of an oil lamp, his face unreadable, his thoughts silent. Around him, the palace breathes. 1,000 lives orbit his own butt in the end. His solitude is not so different from that of the concubines, who wait quietly in their own chambers, wondering what tomorrow may bring. Now, let us return to the inner quarters, not to the perfume and silk of courtship, but to something quieter and deeper, the world of motherhood. In the life of a concubine, bearing a child, especially a son, was more than a moment of joy. It was a shift in destiny. A single birth could change her rank, her influence, and the course of generations. But it was also a profound risk. Imagine the moment of discovery when a concubine realizes she is with child. The symptoms may be subtle at first: fatigue, nausea, the quiet swell of the abdomen. But soon, the truth becomes undeniable. At once, she is both elevated and endangered. Pregnancy draws attention from midwives, from court officials, and from other concubines whose fortunes may be threatened by her success. In some courts, a pregnancy was met with ritual celebration. In others, it was treated with caution. The expectant mother might be moved to quieter quarters, her movements restricted, her meals carefully prepared. Attendants watched her closely, not only for signs of illness, but for signs of sabotage. Jealousy could turn deadly. A tampered dish, a slippery step, an overheard whisper. Nothing could be dismissed as mere accident. Midwives were summoned, usually those loyal to the palace, and experienced in the complex dance of discretion. In their hands lay both life and secrecy. The birth itself was often private, attended only by women, yet surrounded by tension. Was the child healthy? Was it male or female? The answer, though natural, held immense weight. If the child was a son, the palace shifted. The concubine was now a mother of the bloodline, a vessel of dynasty. She might be granted a new title, something like Mother of the Prince or Honored Consort. Her living quarters improved. Her voice, once hushed in corners, might now be heard in discussions of household matters. Her status rose, but so did the expectations. Her child would be taken gently, but firmly by palace tutors and nannies. Raised apart, the prince or princess belonged not to the mother, but to the state, to the dynasty. She might visit, receive letters, observe from a distance. But closeness was rare, affection formalized. A mother might watch her child grow from behind a carved screen, never truly knowing the person they would become. If the child was a daughter, the changes were more subtle. Daughters could bring favor too, especially if they were married into powerful families. But the rise in rank was rarely as steep. Some daughters were kept in the palace, trained in etiquette, and prepared for ceremonial roles. Others were married off while still young, used to seal alliances, often never seeing their mothers again. Still, in both cases, motherhood provided a kind of protection. A concubine who bore children was less likely to be dismissed, more likely to be remembered. In some courts, she would be granted property, a small stipend, or a separate residence in later years. Her place in the historical record, though small, would be secured. But motherhood also bound her more tightly to the palace. She could not leave, even if she wished. She was tied forever to the fate of her child and to the currents of succession that could lift or drown her at any moment. Succession was rarely simple. A ruler might have many sons by many women. The competition, always unspoken, began early. Which child would be favored? Which mother had the ruler's ear? Which family connections offered the strongest backing? These questions swirled beneath every formal smile, every ceremonial gathering, and with them came danger. A prince seen as a threat could be exiled or worse, and his mother might follow him into obscurity, or imprisonment, or silence. In some dynasties, the ascension of one son meant the quiet removal of others, to prevent rivalry. The palace could be a cradle or a cage. Yet, many women endured. Some learned to navigate the shifting winds. They aligned themselves with powerful allies, cultivated networks of loyalty, and practiced the art of discretion. Others stepped back, choosing the safety of quiet devotion, living out their days in modest seclusion, proud of the child they had given the world. And still others watched their children ascend to become generals, regents, even emperors. In those rare cases, the concubine became something more, the Empress Dowager, the Queen Mother, a woman whose influence extended beyond the private chambers into the very heart of state affairs. But for most, motherhood in the palace was not about power. It was about preservation, of status, of identity, of memory, a way to remain visible in a place that so easily forgot. Let us linger here for a moment in the soft hush of the nursery, the padded steps of attendants, the lullabies sung in dialects remembered from distant villages. These are the private echoes of a public life. And from here, we will move next into the final seasons of a concubine's journey, the quiet, graceful years after youth fades, when beauty gives way to reflection and life takes on a different, gentler rhythm. Let us now return to the inner chambers once more, though they feel a little different now. The polished floorboards are the same, the gardens still bloom in patterned rows, the embroidered cushions remain in place, but the air is quieter, more settled. This is not the space of youth and ambition. This is the later season of a concubine's life, when the ribbons of court intrigue have loosened, and the world begins to soften its gaze. Imagine a woman in her 40s, perhaps 50s, seated by a window that opens onto a small, private courtyard. She is still attended to, her robes still elegant, her hair still styled. But she is no longer summoned to the ruler's chambers. The nights are hers now, given over to sleep, to reading if permitted, to the gentle rituals of her own choosing. She may have once held favour. She may have been celebrated, whispered about, envied, or she may have passed her palace years in relative quiet. Either way, she has endured, and in doing so, she has earned a different kind of respect, not loud, not powerful, but steady and acknowledged. Retirement, in the context of palace life, did not always mean departure. In many dynasties, long-serving concubines were granted honorary titles and modest privileges as they aged. They might be relocated to quieter quarters still within the palace, but away from the younger women. These wings were often calmer, shaded by trees, filled with older attendants who moved with practiced ease. Life there was slower, less burdened by performance. Here, the concubine might engage in embroidery, poetry, or religious devotion. She might visit gardens, supervise younger servants, or spend time in the company of other retired women sharing stories, comparing memories, softly laughing at former rivalries that once seemed so urgent. For those who had borne children, their status remained tied to their child's fortune. If their son rose in the court, they might gain influence as a royal matron, consulted for matters of etiquette or even statecraft. If their daughter married well, they might be honoured as a respected elder within that noble household. But for many, their influence faded with time, and what remained was memory. And yet, memory can be powerful. These women became keepers of court history, not the history written in scrolls or carved on stone, but the kind held in voices, in expressions, in knowing glances. They remembered who favoured whom, who fell from grace, what rules could be bent, and which must never be broken. Young concubines, newly arrived and still uncertain, might come to them quietly, seeking guidance. And in this, the elder concubines found purpose. But aging in the palace was not without sorrow. The friends of youth may have passed. Old attendants may have retired or died. The ruler himself may be gone, replaced by a son, a nephew, a distant heir. The ceremonies continue, but the faces change. The palace moves on, as it always does. There may be moments of melancholy sitting in a familiar corridor now used by others, watching the moon rise over a courtyard that once held laughter. There is pride, too, in survival, in dignity maintained through shifting fortunes, in knowing that one has lived a life both public and private, seen and unseen. In some dynasties, elderly concubines were honored in death, with small shrines, names etched onto memorial tablets, burial alongside other women of rank. In others, their stories faded with time, recorded in brief lines in imperial ledgers or not at all. But even those whose names were lost left their trace in traditions, in architecture, in the rhythm of daily life that carried on after them. And so, as the seasons turn, a retired concubine may sit quietly beneath the shade of a plum tree. She drinks warm tea from a porcelain cup worn smooth by use. A breeze moves gently through the garden. She closes her eyes, perhaps recalling the sound of a court musician tuning a string, or the first snowfall on palace roofs. She has lived within a world of boundaries and ritual, of silent battles and occasional triumphs. And now, in these final years, she claims something rare: peace. Let us rest with her here a moment, in this small corner of serenity, as dusk falls and the lamps are lit. And when you're ready, we will explore another realm of the concubine's life on, less visible but deeply significant. Her inner world, her emotions, her voice, and how she made sense of the life she lived. Now, we turn inward away from the ceremonies and the silks, the halls and title sand, into a space more private, more personal. The life of a concubine was shaped by external forces: rank, duty, beauty, obedience. But within those formalities lived a quiet world of feelings and thought, the hidden self, the inner garden. Let us imagine, for a moment, the concubine at rest. She is alone in her chamber. A soft lantern glows on the lacquered table. Outside, a fountain murmurs faintly. Perhaps it is evening. Perhaps she has finished her embroidery, her scroll reading, her daily bow to the ancestors. In this moment, she is simply herself, unnamed in the histories, but entirely alive in thought. What did she feel? At times, surely, pride, to be chosen, to wear fine robes, to sit in a chamber once occupied by someone of note, to hear her name called by the ruler, or see her child flourish. These moments, though few, would shine like lanterns in memory, soft but steady. But there must have been sorrow too. The sorrow of waiting, of wondering, of loving someone who could not love freely in return, of being passed over or forgotten, of seeing another rise when she herself once stood in that light. Or perhaps the sorrow came not from comparison, but from isolation. Even amid attendance and formality, she may have longed for the familiar voices of family, the feel of village ground underfoot, the simplicity of anonymity. There may have been anger, rarely voiced, but deeply felt, at the rules she could not change, at the women who maneuvered cruelly, at the silence expected of her in the face of loss, betrayal, or injustice. But such feelings had no safe place in the formal world of court life. They were pressed inward, softened into sighs, or stitched quietly into the seams of her garments. And what of love? Love in the palace was complicated. Some concubines may have felt true affection for the ruler brief, flickering moments of connection that transcended formality. Others may have found love elsewhere, quietly and dangerously in a confidant, a eunuch, a memory never spoken aloud. Most, perhaps, poured their love into their children, or into the arts they practiced, or into quiet service done well. There were many ways to survive emotionally. Some women wrote poetry short verses expressing longing, contentment, or philosophical acceptance. Some kept private journals or exchanged coded notes with fellow concubines. Others found solace in ritual, lighting incense, reciting prayers, arranging flowers in calm repetition. These were small gestures, but they offered rhythm and meaning. And some women simply learned to live in the moment, to find beauty in a morning breeze, in the curve of a ceramic bowl, in the sound of rain on the palace eaves. These small joys became a kind of freedom, a quiet way of claiming selfhood in a life otherwise scripted. Identity in the court was layered. A concubine was many things: servant and noble, mother and woman, visible and invisible. She learned to shape her identity according to those watching, submissive before the Empress, gracious before other consorts, warm before the ruler. And yet, somewhere beneath it all, there remained a truer self formed, not by court titles, but by memory, emotion, and the quiet resistance of continued being. That self endured when the attention faded, when the ruler aged, when the child married, when the palace began to forget. It endured through grief and change, and it was this self that gave meaning to a life otherwise recorded in numbers and names. The historical records rarely speak of these inner lives, but if you listen carefully through, poems left unsigned, letters stored in silk, or the remembered turns of song, you can hear them, not loud, but present, steady, real. Let us pause with her now, the concubine in her quiet room, feeling the weight and lightness of her own breath. She is no longer waiting for anyone. She simply isn't. That, at last, is enough. From here, we turn to the broader picture, the final chapter of our journey where we step back and reflect on what it meant to live this life, not as a fantasy, but as a human reality, and how echoes of that reality still shape the world today. Now, as our journey draws near its end, let us gently step back. The lanterns of the palace have dimmed, the courtyards have fallen silent, and the footsteps of concubines hurried, once hesitant air now long faded. But though their names may have vanished from the ledgers, their presence lingers in quieter ways. The figure of the concubine, shaped by centuries of custom, desire, and control, has never truly disappeared. She endures reflected in literature, preserved in art, invoked in opera and poetry. And while the real lives of these women were far more complex than the myths suggest, their stories continue to cast a quiet shadow over how we remember the past. In traditional Chinese opera, for example, the concubine often appears as a tragic heroine elegant, sorrowful, full of restrained longing. Dressed in flowing robes with gestures measured and graceful, she is remembered less for her power and more for her suffering, a symbol not of status, but of sacrifice. In Ottoman histories, concubines are sometimes remembered for the children they bore, especially if those children became sultans. The mothers of emperors, known as valide sultan, occasionally wielded real political power, but even they were remembered as extensions of their sons, rarely as individuals with desires or dreams of their own. In modern storytelling, whether in novels, dramas, or films, the concubine has become a figure of fascination. Sometimes romanticized, other times vilified, she often stands in for deeper cultural anxieties about love, power, and the constraints placed on women's bodies. Yet seldom are these portrayals true to the quiet complexity of real lives, lived behind walls. Still, there is something enduring in the image of the concubine, not because she represents submission, but because she represents survival. In a world of shifting favor and silent rules, she found ways to persist, to adapt, to find meaning in moments. And if we look more closely, we see that the role of the concubine reflects larger themes that still resonate today. The imbalance of power in relationships, the tension between choice and circumstance, the quiet negotiations many women continue to make between duty and identity. In this way, the story of the concubine is not so distant. It speaks to us still not in grand declarations, but in the soft, steady voice of someone who endured, someone who made her life matter, even when the world around her tried to make her small. And for historians, artists, and storytellers, the challenge remains to remember her not as a symbol or curiosity, but as a person, not just part of the ruler's story, but the author of her own. We might never know her true name, or what she whispered to herself when the palace was asleep, but we know she was there, that she lived, and longed, and loved, that she sang lullabies to her children, counted the steps to the ruler's chamber, watched the plum trees blossom from the same courtyard year after year, that she hoped and sometimes, quietly, hoped no more. Let this reflection rest gently on your mind. The life of a concubine was not grand or simplete, was slow, careful, and filled with small acts of endurance. And in remembering her, we remember countless others who lived in the margins of history, shaping it silently, patiently, with grace. Let us leave the palace now. The halls are empty, the lamps have been extinguished, the silks folded, the incense burned away, and the women who once lived there, each with her own story, have become part of something larger, a human history of quiet strength. And now, dear listener, it is time to return. You have walked softly through the world of courtyards and chambers, of rules unspoken and emotions unshared. You've seen the concubine not as an idea, but as a persona life shaped by care, by caution, and by moments of quiet meaning. As you rest now, feel the calm of distance. The past is no longer a place we peer into anxiously. It is simply there, like an old story told by candlelight. Gentle, faint, enduring. May you sleep deeply, wrapped not in silk, but in peace. And may your dreams be quiet and kind. Good night.